why did we wait so damn long to make this move? Why did Zach Wilson have to get injured for Joe Douglas and company to feel motivated to say to themselves, okay, now we need to make a move for a free agent, or excuse me, for a veteran quarterback? The timing of it makes absolutely no sense to me whatsoever. It just feels so sloppy, and it feels like there's no plan when there should have been a plan, when there could have been a plan.
These next 2 weeks are going to be what? For what? What are we learning? I know there's a lot of other young kids learning, but how are we going to evaluate them and get them better when the quarterback that you have in has not made his first career start either? Name me the last team to have two quarterbacks in the first 8 weeks of a season make their respective first career starts. Go look that one up, Elias. And why would you put yourself in that position?
What's going on, Jets fans? Welcome into NYJ Today, episode 36 of the Wednesday Night Podcast. I got Chad, I got James tonight. No Mikey. We need a break from him, I feel like. And we could honestly probably pin the 54-13 loss on Mike. I feel like that's fair. So, Chad, how are you doing tonight, man?
Well, I mean, I've sort of recovered, I guess, since Sunday, but it's hard to recover from a loss like that.
Yes, brutal indeed. And James, we have not heard from you, so why don't you go ahead and you can have a little soliloquy right now. You can just tell us a little bit about initial thoughts of the thumping that we received.
Yeah, I haven't recovered yet, I'll be honest. I just really haven't. It was probably one of the more, or it's up there for most embarrassing loss like I've ever been a part of as a Jets fan. And it's really saying a lot because we went through some really big disappointments over the years here. But I mean, it was just completely, utterly disappointing, embarrassing. I never imagined the game going that way. I really didn't. I remember last Wednesday, I think all three of us predicted a loss.
I think Mike predicted a win, actually. Again,
so there we go.
F
there
that
we found
guy.
The reason.
Yeah.
We found the reason. No, but I think most people thought they would lose. I just not like that. I mean, it was. I remember sitting on my couch, and I've said it a couple times. Like, I'm an Alabama fan. I felt like I was watching Alabama against like Mercer or like someone who just did not belong on the same field. Different class, different coaching stratospheres, and took me a while to kind of get over it. And we'll go into I won't say everything now, but we'll go into a little bit why I did concerning and disappointing at the same time.
Yeah, absolutely. And we got our first stupid Mike message of the night, which I think is perfect. We'll kick it off with that. So, yeah, man, it was brutal, as you said. And, me predicting a 11-point loss I don't get any credit for for what we actually saw. As you said, it was in a whole other stratosphere of a loss that we would have ever imagined. And I do think that it's fair to say one of the most embarrassing losses. And like you said, it's kind of crazy to think that when we've had so many where you just want to bury your head in the sand, basically. Chad, can you name, before we really get into the show, can you name off the top of your head maybe two losses that are as bad or maybe that just you stand out as worse? And no playoff. You can't do playoff losses.
How about losses that kept us from the playoffs? How about
Sure.
All right, top of my head. I mean, how about what was it? Buffalo 2015.
Mm-hmm. That was a bad one.
Week 17. How about the year? What about the Dolphins 20 Oh God, I'm gonna say 2008 Dolphins beat us in the second to last week or in the last week of the season. That was the year. Of course, that was the Brett Favre season start.
Oh yeah. That was terrible. Oof.
Yeah.
You know, started like 7-2, 8-1, something like that,
Yeah.
and then finished with 5 out of 6 losses or something like that.
Yeah.
I remember throwing my. I remember taking off my. I was really. We were a lot younger then. I was really a lot more emotional. I remember taking off my jersey and chucking it across the room,
Mm.
and just like saying like trying to implore the dog to just eat it, because that was horrible. Yeah, we've had a lot of those, man. A lot of those. I remember a Monday night game too. Was it in the Geno era, in the Monday night, or maybe in the Sanchez era, where we had to go to. It was not Los Angeles at the time. It was San Diego, and then they embarrassed us.
Yeah.
There's been so many. My God, there's been so many.
So many. I remember the one when Todd Bowles was still the coach, and it wasn't the one that you're referring to, the 2015 game where we lost to miss the playoffs. There was another game where we got our doors blown off, and Buffalo at that time, not a good football team, and we just got completely shellacked. And I remember that was one of the worst Todd Bowles losses, not the 2015 one.
Was that when Buffalo started? Oh God, what's his face from USC?
Matt, yes, Barkley.
Yeah.
That's right.
Yeah, Barkley.
Yes.
Like they started Matt Barkley, and they
lit
just
it up. Yep. So very very embarrassing. So anyway, we don't need to keep talking about it, but as we have made it very clear, it was a very bad loss. All right, so Michelle's asking, did we discuss fantasy this week? No fantasy. This is reality show. Gitmo Bob says, hopefully the Jets get to pay back the cheating cheap shots Pats someday. It won't be this year, which is just depressing to think about, that we don't get another swing at them. Jets gang coming in with the JETS, Jets. Mike Galizia, he says, where is the leader on this O-line? McGovern should be the leader, making the adjustments and showing some anger to hits on his quarterback. We talked a little bit about that on Sunday night. We didn't hear from you, James, about that. Give us your thoughts, and if you don't agree with us, it's okay, because there are a few people out there that say clean hit. What was your take specifically on the sideline hit that he took? Not the Matt Judon one, because I feel like that one was pretty clean.
Yeah, the Matt Judon one where Zach actually got hurt, I really didn't have a problem with it. Mm-mm. Could you have thrown a flag? Most likely, because I think the rule is when you put your weight on the quarterback. Mm-hmm. But dirty-wise, like, I'm not going to go against him, Judon, on that one, because he's really just trying to finish the play. Sure. There's no indication there. The sideline one, I had a problem with. I did have a problem with it because Zach is rolling to the sideline. Yes, he's going to make the throw, but there, just put two hands on him and push him out of bounds. Like, it was a pretty clear, I'm going to take this step and lower my head to basically right above the knee thigh area. So you're looking at real danger there in terms of he poses no threat to run anywhere or do anything. If you just push him out of bounds, he's fine. So I did have a problem with not only the hit, but also our reaction to. I don't know if you guys discussed that at all.
Oh yeah.
But
this is what Mike Galizia is referring to. Go ahead.
Yeah. So I mean, at that point in time, the game is pretty much out of hand. I mean, it was out of hand. I don't know, at the first drive. I think after we punted the first time around, you knew it was going to get out of hand. But at that point in time, game's kind of out of hand. I wouldn't have cared if one of the linemen got ejected, to be quite honest with you, and not like dirty hit one of their guys back, but they got helmets on. Guys are still throwing punches when they got helmets on, but just taking someone to the ground after the whistle, starting a scuffle. I would have not cared at all if that lineman would have got suspended for a game or two. Don't care either. I think that would have sent a clear message, because now there is that thought process that, hey, when we get around Zach, we may be able to get away with a couple things here and there because there's going to be no consequence to it. Like, you have to set the tone. Like, sorry, I don't mean to bring like hockey in, but if anyone watches hockey and they're Ranger fans, like last year, their best player got taken down to the ice, dirty hit, injured, out for the rest of the year. They had nobody to really step up and protect him. So they just grabbed a bunch of dudes this offseason that can flat out are physical and can fight, and nobody's doing it anymore. It's over. It's done with. And guys aren't going to hit your best players like that anymore because they'll respond. So I kind of put it in that same light there. So dirty hit, bad reaction by the Jets.
What's your response when people say, well, he's a runner after he crosses the line of scrimmage, he's a runner, and therefore it's not looked at as hitting a quarterback? How do you react to that argument?
Yeah, no, I think it's basically kind of where he is on the field, right? I mean, he got hit and he was almost out of bounds, or he got hit. The contact initiated probably within a foot of the sideline or so. Mm-hmm. So I think at that point in time, like, the decision to go down low was completely unnecessary when he could have simply just pushed him out of bounds. So I think there was a clear intent there that I know I can probably just push him out of bounds, but you saw the head tilt down towards the knee, and that would be my response in terms of it was just completely unnecessary.
That's the key. It was unnecessary roughness. People were trying to say, oh, it's not roughing the passer. Ain't nobody talking about roughing the passer. It was a personal foul. It was unnecessary roughness all day, every day. I don't care if it was the well, I guess it does matter if it's the quarterback, but the problem is he had thrown the football already too. It was also potentially a late hit. So there was a couple of layers to that. And the lack of a reaction was definitely concerning. And that's what Mike is getting at. And that's what, Gitmo Bob is referring to here. Whenever you play this soft with no passion, you're going to get a lot of players hurt. And he's right. I think that's definitely part of the fact. I mean, the sideline didn't even budge. They just kind of like, oh, okay, another hit on the quarterback, no big deal. So pretty disappointing.
And how many teams are getting that call? Like, how many quarterbacks you think are getting that call? It's got to be a large majority. You'd probably even say if it was a couple guys like a Brady and Mahomes or somebody like that, that player's probably getting tossed and probably ejected for a couple games. Like, so I think the consistency factor is a thing too. Listen, if you're calling a strike that's a little bit outside, if you're calling it all game long, you got to adapt to it. That is what it is. But I just think the consistency there too with the ref in terms of some of the other roughing the passers we've seen in the past or this season have been not even close to what Zach got hit with on Sunday.
I'm with you. All right, a couple more comments, and then we will get into our mailbag. We have quite a few. Some really good ones this week, actually. Grant Rude, he says, do you guys think the beating New England hung on the Jets started in London? They've been flat. Could it possibly be a jet lag or some sort of hangover type of situation bleeding over from London? I don't know. It was a 2-week time span. They had the bye week. We've talked about that, how they came out completely emotionless, flat from the bye. I don't know. Do you guys put anything into that, Chad? What do you think? Coming out flat from London.
Yeah, no. I mean, I chalk it up more to the bye week, and then and speaking of which, it's that's been an issue going back to the Rex Ryan era. He had the audacity a few days ago to make comments about that after he had historically awful, unprepared games coming out of the bye week. I don't think that there's any explanation for it. They may have been flat. I think to a degree the Titans win may have been a little bit of their Super Bowl. And that may have not prepared them for the London game, but there should have been a reset after that. And evidently there just wasn't, because again, they look flat. They look flat on the field. They look flat and emotionless on the sideline. If we recognize it from a fan point of view, I'm sure that they're actually going through it. You know what I mean?
Yeah, absolutely. I think that's good to leave it there, actually. I didn't consider the fact that they came off of the Titans game probably riding a little too high, or potentially a little too high. We don't know that for sure. But it is a young team, so maybe when they won, they were just like, yeah, this is it. We're going to turn the corner right here. All good, smooth sailing from here on out kind of thing. Because these are some young kids, 21, 22, 23-year-olds just running around playing a man's game. So we got a disagreement. Dennis says neither hit was illegal. Zach didn't try to go out of bounds. He actually pulled up at the sideline to throw. You're not the only one with that take, so there's no hate because you don't agree with us. No big deal. And we'll go to the mailbag after this. Did the Jets send the tape to the league office for review? If it was Brady, the ref would have tackled the Pats player before the hit. I don't believe so because Robert Saleh came out and said clean hit. So he actually agrees with Dennis. He agrees with all the people that say it wasn't a dirty hit. To me, it was late. It was unnecessary. It's not about, the rules of was he in the pocket, out of the pocket, that kind of stuff. It's not really like that. So, all right, we will move on. We'll go to our first mailbag. We haven't talked about it miraculously, so we will hit on this right now. Hype highlights. He says, did we waste a pick by getting Joe Flacco? Chad, I'm going to let you go first tonight. What do you think, man? Did we waste a pick?
We did. Absolutely. The Eagles and a lot of the Eagles and their fans think that they fleeced us. I don't know if you necessarily consider getting fleeced on a conditional 6-rounder, but nonetheless, totally unnecessary. I read today, I think it was Samini that posted that he's not going to start. Mike White's going to start. Mm-hmm. I see no upside to this. He's unless now they're trying to bring him back as a mentor type role. Because Zach is going to be spending more time, obviously, on the sideline and doing film study and things like that. This move makes no sense to me. I'd prefer to see what I have in Mike White anyway. Yes, it was a wasted pick.
Fair enough. What do you got for me, James?
I don't think it was a wasted pick. It's tough. I'm still trying to wrap my head around it just because of the timing of it. And I think it could become a 5th-round pick. Am I right there?
It can, yes.
5th-round pick is still a pretty valuable pick. So if it becomes a 5th-round pick, even though it's just a 1-round difference, that might slightly change my mind. But it's just like the timing of it. And I don't want to bash Joe Douglas too much, only because – listen, when you think you made a mistake and you try to fix it, right? You try to do something that might be able to alleviate some pressure in terms of, hey, listen, we didn't do it. Maybe we should. But if we wait any longer, maybe there are some implications there that kind of hurt maybe Zach, right? So maybe it's kind of an admittance of a mistake, which I'm fine with. Everyone makes them. So you do have to try to mitigate what might have been a disaster if Mike White goes out there and he gets hurt, right? Or, Josh Johnson, he's got some veteran experience. Maybe it just hasn't worked out the same. Joe Flacco does have a little bit of history in this offense, even though if we really don't know what this offense is, he has schematics wise, he has some history in it with Gary Kubiak in Baltimore. And so I wouldn't say it's a wasted pick just because I want to hold out, maybe hope that if Joe Douglas does play, maybe not, he's not going to play this week, but the week after and a couple weeks after that maybe, just maybe, he kind of springs loose Elijah Moore a little bit, right? Or maybe that veteran presence can help those younger guys kind of maybe continue to develop, whereas a Mike White may really hold them back a little bit. So I want to see kind of how it plays out. He's got that connection with Denzel Mims, so that would be kind of fun.
Everybody's joking about that.
So I want to hold out and just see how it plays with Flacco, how he does when he comes back, and then if there is some kind of and I know it didn't work out, and I'm sorry to bring him up, but Sam Darnold and Josh McCown had like a really cool relationship, off the field type of thing. Maybe Flacco and Zach kind of just hit on it together a little bit, and they kind of form a relationship where we see a difference in Zach's play when he comes back.
So I'm a little bit in the middle. I lean towards not liking it, and it's like kind of what you hinted at. The timing, in my opinion, is really, really bad. If you at any point wanted Flacco, and clearly they did, apparently they wanted to sign him, but he chose Philadelphia. I don't know. It's hard because maybe that was the guy they were keyed in on, and they just didn't feel comfortable with anybody else. But the timing is just so rough, man, because now we are up against it without Wilson being there. You are right, and I did make a video for the first time in like forever. I talked about how this does, when he gets in the lineup, it does help the young guys, Elijah Moore, maybe get going a little bit, Denzel Mims, even Michael Carter to some extent. Maybe the running game can get going a little bit more. So I like it for that regard, or for that reason, I should say. But I have to assume that if he's going to play, the pick will probably turn into a 5th-round pick. He probably only has to play, 2 games for it to kick into a 5th. So we paid a pretty steep price for a backup, a 36-year-old backup who's almost certainly not going to be with the team that he passed on signing with this past free agency. So in that regard, that's why I don't like it. I just feel like if you were going to make this move for the vet, you should have done this months ago. And if you have Josh Johnson on the practice squad, and if what they say is true about them really liking Mike White, roll with that. Why even? I don't know. I don't know. I feel like Josh Johnson as the backup, although certainly not ideal, we're not really looking to win games this year, so what's the point? I don't know. So I don't necessarily agree or disagree with either one of you. I'm just kind of like, I don't know. I don't know where to I don't know where to fall on the pendulum. All right. We got some interesting comments here. Gitmo with a little bit of optimism, which I always like. He said, Gerard Davis and CJ and Quinnen Williams all practicing. Could it be that the Jets will have a competent linebacking group? I'm sorry, not Quinnen, Quincy Williams. This group is definitely better than the one we had last week. There's no doubt about it. So, yeah, I think they will play better defensively. Obviously, CJ Mosley coming back is a huge factor. I think I almost jinxed us when I talked about it in a tweet, how losing Mosley was a big, big loss. So, the football gods didn't like me being right, I guess. I don't know. Verns, we only got so many roster spots, still have tons of picks. I hope it's Tampa's 6th rounder. I'm not sure. I think it is Tampa's, actually.
Is it?
I think it is. I could be wrong on that. I don't know. Jets Gang, he says, why didn't we use a pick on a tight end? Well, Ertz was available, and I think that they were trying to trade him to a team that was contending. I think that's the big thing. They didn't want to ship him off to the Jets to basically just go end his career there. I don't know who's available. That's the other thing. We don't know if there's even anybody worthwhile to trade for. So that could be another stopping point. We all recognize that tight end's bad and that we need to upgrade it, but it's just in a rough spot, man. Scott Baudier, he says, I believe Flacco is back to see if it's growing pains by Zach or if it's play calling by LaFleur. Interesting. So he's saying maybe by having the veteran, they can kind of analyze the offense. That's not a bad way to look at it, actually. That's a very interesting take.
Never really thought about that.
Go ahead, Chad.
In that first drive from Mike White, when he comes in and all of a sudden they're moving the ball, of course, we don't want to go there, but imagine how different the conversation would have been if he hadn't thrown the 2 picks. We still would have lost, but he was moving the ball competently. This whole week would have been entirely different were it not for those 2 picks. He definitely settled down, and reminded us that he's okay. He's a backup in his very first, taking his NFL first snaps ever. So, but yeah, if you start to see any modicum of success out of Joe Flacco, it's gonna really make us wonder and question what's going on with Zach even more than we already are.
Yeah, it's interesting. And I think like what you said, James, it does help to see the young weapons maybe flash a little bit more than what we've seen. I don't know if it's a red flag for Zach necessarily, because Joe's been doing this a really long time, but it will be very interesting, and it's a very good comment to make, so I appreciate that comment. Scott. Gumball, he says, Saleh reminds me of Bowles. Nice guy who is too easy on the players. We do have a segment about that tonight, and I'll savor the flavor on that one a little bit. All right, let's go to our next mailbag. We talked a little bit about it already, the Wilson hit. What were your thoughts? I'm going to change the comment a little bit. What were your thoughts on the fact that the players came out, and we talked about this, Chad, so we'll let James go, about them talking about the running up the score thing and how they took it, personally, and they didn't like it. What were your thoughts on that?
You got to stop them. I mean, it's just a fact of the matter. In my opinion, it's a similar argument to when everyone hated Cam Newton doing the Superman in the end zone, and he blatantly just said, "Then don't let me in the end zone." I think it's not Pee Wee football, it's not high school football, it's not college football. These guys are especially the relationship here between the Jets and the Patriots and Belichick and his whole history with the Jets. That dude is not going to let up at all. I can't remember specifically what he did in that game in 2019, that ghost game with Sam Darnold. But late in the game, up 30, whatever it was, 30-0. I don't think we scored that game. It was 30 and change to nothing.
I think it was 33 to nothing, yeah.
Yeah, and there were some maneuvers he was doing with punt team, running out the clock, doing the whole kind of, look at me, I know, the rule book back and forth, and I'm going to pull out these tricks here and there. I think that whole relationship, they were never going to take their foot off the gas. It just wasn't going to happen. And so if you don't want to get blown out 54-13, the coaches and the players have to do a whole lot better job pre-game and during the game. You can't let it happen. That's just a fact of the matter to me.
Yep, I see it the same way. I don't think that they should have said anything. They should have just said we need to do a better job, basically. All right, we'll go to this one. It's a weekly thing now. Greg Van Roten. So the first one says, why is Van Roten not benched? There are plenty of plays where he is getting beat on critical plays. And then Robbie Oak, he says, who can we get to replace Greg Van Roten? People saying there's no one out there and teams don't trade good O-linemen and would take weeks for the new O-line to mix to gel. But he says, I'll take anyone. I looked at it. I looked at our roster. I looked at our practice squad. The only guy that I thought made sense was Drew Samia, and I did a little reading on Drew Samia. He's one of the worst guards in the NFL last year. He is not good. And he's young, and I think that's why Joe Douglas picked him up, because he thought, if he develops a little bit, maybe he could turn into something, but there really isn't anything available. I looked at the free agency as well. I can read you a couple of names from that. I mean, it is not looking good in that regard. Mitchell Schwartz is an offensive tackle, so he's no-go. David DeCastro is dealing with an injury and likely not to ever play football again. He hasn't officially announced his retirement, but there have been no rumors about him even going to visit teams. And then it dries out real bad. Kelechi Osemele is out there, but he ain't coming back to the Jets. J.R. Sweezy, 32-year-old guard. I believe he was on the Saints last. So, I mean, there's just not a lot out there. So, I am not saying that Van Roten is worth keeping or any good, but we don't have options right now. And trading for one, teams aren't going to do that mid-season. Not anybody worth keeping, not anybody worth having on your roster. Offensive linemen definitely do not grow on trees. They're one of the hardest positions, I think, to find. Quality depth. What do you think about that, James?
Yeah, no, this is going to be a 2022 offseason fix. I think it's just right. I was going to say the same thing. Really, your only option is to just say, hey, listen, if this is what it's going to be, how much worse, I guess, can Feeney do? Like, what if he actually does just a little bit better? Like, it's worth the shot at least to make the switch. It feels like it's a force at this point in time. They have to see what we're seeing, right? Like you would imagine. I don't know. I mean, I wrote down on my notes here, he's giving up 3.7 pressures per game. Right. You might as well just roll with no right guard. I mean, like the videos were pretty prevalent this week so far in terms of his performance against the Patriots. The 4th and 1 that we didn't get was pretty much on him. Like if you look back at it, the defensive tackle, he let him go entirely across his face and make the stop on 4th and 1. Even if you just like legitimately just get in his way for like a half a second. Most likely he can't even make the play on the short yardage like that. So it's just really concerning. But yeah, I agree with you in terms of this is going to be a 2022, fix. Do the Browns let go a guy like Wyatt Teller and let him hit the open market? I think legitimately Jet fans would give Wyatt Teller anything that he absolutely wanted and would be absolutely fine with whatever Joe Douglas decided to give to him to kind of fix up that spot, because that one spot is really holding back the Jets offensive line from at least being average to above average even. Because some of the other guys, I mean, Elijah Vera Tucker, I got his jersey on right now because he's just playing unbelievably well for his age. George Fant's doing a pretty good job holding down the left tackle spot, at least while Mekhi Becton's gone. McGovern is a little iffy. I think Jeff fans have their eye on one individual to take that spot next offseason. Yep, yeah, that's the pretty popular pick. We'll have to decide where we actually fall in the draft before we start talking center in the top 5 potentially. But yeah, so there's just not much that we can do right now at this point.
Yeah, and an interesting comment from Vern. This was a scary injury at the time, and I think he's going to be okay. I think he'll rebound, but Cam Clark's injury was bigger than we thought. I don't know if he would have started, but I think he definitely would have cracked the starting lineup by now. There's no way they would have not given him a swing, I don't think. That would be crazy. So yeah, it's not a good situation, and we're just going to have to literally deal with it and wait for the 22 offseason, I think. So, all right. We are going to go to the next mailbag, which I think goes really well with that conversation that we just had, and this is from Grant Rude, and he gave me a homework assignment because why not? I'm not a busy man or anything, but he did find a really cool article actually. So he said, I read this and a few other articles on the Shanahan West Coast system to try and see where the Jets are headed. I think a lot of reading up on Mike Shanahan's philosophies like this are a big reason why I'm not as low on LaFleur and not as high on Wilson. And he has talked about the offense. He was upset with LaFleur early on, but then he's kind of backtracking a little bit, and that's a good thing because he read about it, saying maybe we should slow down a little bit on LaFleur. He's saying, as everyone else seems to be, I'd love to hear what you take away from the read, and there's some really interesting things that were talked about in the article, and because I knew you guys weren't going to be able to read it, I went ahead and I screenshotted them. Let me just see if I can find them. Here's the first one, and I'll just read it. So it says, from a practical standpoint, this means that some owners who have purchased an offensive system might have done so without knowing that some of the most critical cogs making it run were not available to them. So a new head coach must teach his coaches how to teach, pray that they can absorb the information on their own, or, as one coach saw from close range at a recent stop, abandon the planned installment of the offense altogether, knocking out a promising season before it could even get started. So what that's saying is Saleh has to be able to teach the coaches on the staff these different systems. And in the article, it also talks about how these things take a lot of time. So this is Mike Shanahan talking. He says, I don't care if you're offensive line or coach or the tight end coach, you need to understand all phases of the running game. There's different types of defenses that you're facing every week, and so the scheme has to change. Read defenses, penetrating defenses, 8 and 7 man fronts. There's a lot of different directions that you have to go. And then the last one that I captured, this is the most poignant one. It's going to take you years. It's not going to happen overnight, Mike Shanahan told recently, from Cabo apparently. It says you got to believe in it. You got to be a product of the environment. It's going to take time. So I thought that was super cool of him to share that with me. And there were other things that they talked about, how offensive line coaches are starting to get paid more in the NFL because it's such a premium and critical position to develop and to have the offensive line just be dominating. I mean, that's what you really need in the NFL. You need a dominant offensive line. So any takeaways just from that, like in regards to LaFleur, the offensive line, like perhaps that's one of the things that maybe we undersold, was the fact that this was going to take longer. Even if we don't have the greatest pieces in place, this was just going to be a developmental process anyway. Chad, what are your thoughts on that? Just like LaFleur and the offensive line in general.
Well, first of all, I agree. I agree with the premise of the article, and you combine that with the fact that we as an organization have historically neglected the O-line in the draft, going back now for over a decade. Pair that with the injuries that we've had. Now you've got a new coaching staff with a new and incredibly complex system, and it just creates for this kind of a disaster that we're seeing right now. Whether or not it can be fixed in a year, I mean, that remains to be seen. We are in the thick of it as fans. So, I mean, right after the game, what do we want to do? We want LaFleur fired. I'm cracking jokes about him just getting his driver's license. I think the hardest thing to have as fans is that, perspective, that 3,000-foot view or whatever. Hopefully that comes with time. I think that's where this article was coming from. All I can do is kind of say, let's try to be positive and hope that they can get this together to the degree that we think they can later.
James, any just thoughts on the fact that, as bad or as critical as we've been on LaFleur, the play calling, I think that's the thing that I think is fair to point out, is the play calling is not great. But as far as like installing the system, it taking a long time to get it in place, what are your thoughts on that?
Yeah, so I did think it was going to take time. I thought it was going to be sometime this season, to be honest with you. I thought so because of John Benton, and the article. It seems like a good. I want to read that article. So if anyone could maybe tweet, if maybe you could send that over to me.
I think
I'd
Grant,
like to read it.
So Grant, there you go. If you don't mind passing that along. I'm pretty sure he follows you. So, Grant, if you don't mind sharing that one more time, we would appreciate that.
Yeah, because it is a system where, especially in the run game, and it seems like that's where the article is kind of geared towards, that outside zone, wide zone run scheme, that West Coast, that the Shanahan that they've all kind of made famous now, and everyone's trying to implement. It's a system where kind of everyone's got to be on the same page. So it makes sense and obviously that's a really general statement, but on the same page in terms of the running back is, in that outside zone scheme, they're reading the blocks up front. And with each defensive front, it's going to change in terms of the zone blocking and kind of how that whole system works. So you're kind of all working together. So for the wide receiver, the running backs coach, the lineman coach, everybody's got to be on the same page in terms of how they're actually going to run the system, and they all need to understand that in order for it to gel. So that that makes sense. I didn't think it would take years, because it feels like the places that have implemented it hasn't taken years. That's kind of like Stefanski and the Browns. I know they have a Nick Chubb. I know they have a Nick Chubb, and I know they have the offensive line. So, that is probably a big factor. But the minute Stefanski took over, that team kind of just turned around. I forgot who they had previously before that. He only lasted one season.
Kitchen?
Freddie Kitchens. Yep, Freddie Kitchens. I mean, that team was a disaster. And it just kind of flip of the switch turns around. Obviously, the other LaFleur, he's got Aaron Rodgers, so that kind of changes the whole complexity of the picture there. But and even for Kyle Shanahan, was it his second year that they went to the Super Bowl? His second year, maybe?
Second or third, yeah.
Yeah. So obviously they seem to have a little bit success earlier on, and maybe the way the roster is just structured, it's just going to take more time for us, and that's fine. But the main thing is when you run the system, all the research that I did over the offseason was you have to be married to it. It can't be like, hey, we run it every so often. Like, it's just a part of our scheme. Like, you're either all in or you're not. And so I think that's something, too, that maybe we just need to have a little bit more patience because it'll get better as time goes on here because they really just have to kind of get it down and stick with what they want to do. If they start deviating, we're going to throw off the whole timing of whatever they're trying to create.
And that's one of my big concerns is that if we do just say, you know what, this is bad, just fire LaFleur, let's get rid of him. I think that could, I said this on the Sunday thing, I think that could do more damage than good, man. We're going to wind up having to reinstall a brand new offense, and it's going to hurt Zach. And we want Zach to be successful, and I think that it's really just better if we take lumps. It sucks. I know everybody's very, very upset with LaFleur right now, but just try to keep in mind all the players that we talk about that are struggling. Obviously, Zach as a rookie, Greg Van Roten is literally the worst. He's just terrible. We know McGovern's kind of sketchy in the middle, so tight end is terrible. So we just have to improve the team, and perhaps we'll start to see this offense take off. There's some really good comments, guys. I do apologize. There's no way I'm going to be able to read all of these. You're just totally loading it up with great comments. This one stuck out to me. Rick Fisher, he says, how many draft years will it be before we can be consistently competitive? This is a tricky question because Joe Douglas has now had 2 drafts, and I'm not suggesting that we should be consistently competitive, but I did expect the team to play better. I think we all did. So, Chad, what are your thoughts? How many drafts should it be before we're consistently competitive, not being blown out? We've been blown out so many times lately. So when is that going to end?
Well, it depends on what you do with those drafts, right? I think we've all started to lose faith in Joe Douglas. I mean, from a drafting perspective, barring the Joe Flacco trade, we all really like what he's doing on a free agency perspective. I would say a minimum 4. And I know that seems like maybe that seems too long, but I think, we see injuries, we see players get picked and high every year. We think they're going to work out. They never do. So you got to give some lenience towards that. I would say 2 more drafts out of him before we can really see a full spectrum of where this thing is going.
I actually think you're right on the money. I think 4 is fair. James, what do you think? How many drafts should we realistically sit here and say, this is how many Joe Douglas should have, and if we're really just still terrible, what do we do then? Or, like, how long do you think we should?
So is consistently competitive like we're going for the playoffs?
I would say I think he's saying, when will we not be terrible? I don't know if he's saying Super Bowl playoffs. I think he's just kind of saying, like, when can we just expect to put on the game?
Right.
We might lose, we might win, but we'll be in the game.
So I have 2 answers. I have one answer in terms of where I'm at, like if I was a part of the organization making decisions, and then I have one answer in terms of what I expect as like a realistic person, right? As a fan.
He just put it in the comments. Playoffs is actually what he's saying. Okay, go ahead. Sorry.
All right. So organizational wise, this is going to sound crazy, but it better be after this upcoming offseason. This thing better look a whole heck of a lot better next year. And I'll include free agency, which they have a ton of money, and not even the cap space they currently have. That cap space, what do I call it? Like the ceiling or whatever the max is that you can spend in a year. That's going to jump up like significantly because of, kind of we're not out of the pandemic as a country, but in terms of the NFL's got their revenue back, they can put that cap space up. So draft with 2 ones that could potentially be in the top 10, both of them. 2 twos and a whole bunch of other ones. We could potentially have 4 in the top 45. Right. Let's put it that way. And if you have 4 in the top 45 after having 2 last year, and you have a whole bunch of money to spend, and I'm not saying you spend it recklessly, but you spend it smartly on depth and things like that. And then you have guys coming back from injury that we are currently essentially missing. Maybe you get a whole season of Mekhi Becton. You have a full season of a Carl Lawson. Maybe you get a Lamarcus Joyner back. You have a C.J. Mosley that could be fully healthy. And there are some other guys, but I think they're mostly guys that are on 1-year deals. They may not be back. But if you put that whole puzzle piece together in terms of what they're missing injury-wise, the value of the draft picks, the amount of cap space, and the fact that it's going to be the second year of this coaching staff, you better be competitive next year. And I mean competitive that, hey, listen, if we're losing games, they're close, and we have some weeks where we're on the other end of what we saw this past weekend. And I don't mean like 54 points on the other end, but we have a 35-10 kind of win type of thing. Like I think that should be the expectation. Now, realistically, I think it'll take next year and the year after that.
I'm sorry. Go ahead.
Yeah. So two. I think that's realistically that's what happened. But my patience is telling me it better happen after the end of this year.
I think that's what we were all thinking. Even going into this year, we were all optimistic going into this year, but we were really saying, listen, 2022 really ought to be the catapult. That really, really should be. I'm with both of you. I think if in 2 years, in 2 more drafts, if we're not seeing big improvement, that is alarming for everybody involved. Joe Douglas, Robert Saleh, Zach Wilson, everybody. So to answer your question, Rick, that's what we're going with. Another year to 2 years, and we should really be not the worst team or one of the worst teams in the NFL. That's really all I'm looking for at this point. I would be thrilled with an 8-9 season, 9-8. That would be wonderful.
Yeah, it's unbelievable. Like when you talk to other fans and you talk about what your expectations are for your teams. One of my best friends, a lot of my friends are Ravens fans, and we were talking before the season, and with them it's always like, well, what do you mean? Like we got to go deep in the playoffs. We got to get a Super Bowl. I'm like, I want competitive losses, and they're like, what? What do you mean? I'm like, yeah, I know that we're going to lose, but I would like to be competitive in those games. And it sounds insane, but that's the truth. Like that's exactly what it is that we want. And now it looks like we can't even get that until maybe next year.
Yep. We have a new person. I apologize if you've been here before. I don't recognize you. He says O-line is the key nowadays, and he throws in a couple of other really good comments talking about the Jets back when they were 1-15, scoring 20-plus points per game in some of those games. He said 7 of the games they were 20-plus points. So thank you for the comments, and thanks for joining us tonight. All right, we will move to the last couple, and we'll go a little faster because it's already creeping up on 9 o'clock, and I want to make sure we get to discussing the upcoming game. That's really what this show's all about anyhow. So we'll go to the next one. And guys, if you're watching this right now, and gals, because we do have some girls every once in a while pop in here, feel free to look out for the mailbag drop on Twitter. So if you're not following me on Twitter, go ahead and do that. It's on the screen right now. And also look on the community tab for the channel. I post the mailbag drop on there as well. All right, so if the Jets, this is from Eagle Fang, and it's a little bit of a rant. He says, if the Jets lose to the Jags, Texans, Fish twice, assuming they lose to every tough team left this season, do we start the fire Saleh Joe Douglas clean house? Let's be honest, the Jets are not the favorites against any middle tier team or any elite team, which is fair. He says, so you have to assume L's for all of those games, but those are the matches that I'm watching, and if the New York Jets lose all of those games, Saleh and Joe have to go. And again, I want to reiterate, he's talking about the Jags, Texans, and the 2 Dolphins games. He's saying if we lose all of those, we have to at least consider a rally cry to fire those 2 men. I said it on Sunday. I don't even a 1-16 season. I don't think Joe Douglas or Robert Saleh are going anywhere. James, you're shaking your head no. I think that means you agree with me. I don't think it's going to happen. I think that they are going to be steadfast, and they are clearly trying to build the team through the draft. A lot of fans don't like that, and we all don't like the progress that the team has made, but that is clearly what they want to do, and I think that's what Woody Johnson wants the Jets to do. So I just don't see that happening. I'm not trying to shut you down. I do hear what you're saying, though. It would be a lot of concern if we lose 16 football games this season. That's going to be a problem. This is from earlier, talking about no flag and just shocked over it. And then our last one, which is an interesting one. He's saying, hypothetically, if Saleh were to fire LaFleur, who could the Jets get as their OC? And I think he's saying during the season. James, why don't you take that one? What are your thoughts? If we were, I don't think they're going to do that, but hypothetically, what would they do if they did that?
Yeah, if you do fire LaFleur, hypothetically, you'd have to promote somebody in house. And I know, we lost Greg Knapp over the off season, and that maybe had I don't want to talk about it like that, but there was obviously an impact on the football team. But you'd probably have to quarterback coach. I'm trying to think of somebody with some experience that would be able to step in, that you'd have to come in house, because you can't just change the system overnight, in my opinion anyway. So in-house somebody, the quarterback's coach, I don't even know, to be quite honest with you. It would be a really tough situation.
Yeah, and you're right. I think we all agree that the tragedy is the bigger story, not necessarily the loss. But It is worth mentioning. I think it's fair to say, him not being here with us on the team, huge impact, it looks like, for everybody involved. All right. Got a couple more comments, and then we will get to we'll move on. We're on to Cincinnati after that. Everybody's been saying that all week, and I love it. It's so funny. We are on to Cincinnati. Rodrigo Costa, he is on Twitter. Great guy. Funny. He says, John, do you think the previous GMs messed this team up so bad that it is going to take another 3 years to solve the problem? Most of Mac's draft picks are gone already. JD had to draft basically the whole team. Chad, what do you think? Did he screw it up that badly, McCagnon?
Yeah, look, it's a culture of losing. We touched on this briefly on Sunday. A great organizations are consistent. They're consistent with their head coaches. They're consistent with their front office, and they're consistent with their strategy. How many times can we as an organization blow up and start things over, right? And let's say next year is under expectations too. What are we going to do? Are we going to can Saleh? Are we going to can Joe Douglas? Hire Corn Ferry and do a new search for a new head coach and start the whole process over again. I don't know. But you want to feel like you can do something. So we're always in this position of being kind of torn, right? You're torn. You want to do something. You want to take a drastic action to move things forward, but at the same time, you recognize what it takes to have a long-standing, successful organization. I don't know about you guys, but I mean, I'm tired of being in the bottom 2 or 3 teams in the
Oh
league
yeah.
year after year, year after year. I mean, we've replaced the Browns. I mean, we are the Lions of the AFC at this point. I mean, it's embarrassing, and I'm tired of it. And if suffering through this is what it takes, then I guess that's the price to pay.
So that's the problem. There's nothing wrong with doing a rebuild where you strip it all down and you rebuild through the draft. I actually have been wanting them to do that for a long, long time. I've always felt like the McCagnon era, when they had success in 2015, that was like the worst thing that could have possibly happened to this team, because then they went all in to win and it did not work out. So I have no problem with it, but it's just what you said, Chad. This fan base is literally exhausted of the losing. And so in other situations and other teams where they have to reboot, there's more patience because they've won in the past. I'm thinking about even the Giants. Like, I know at this point the Giants fans are not in favor of what's going on. They're used to winning, but it's been years now, and they in some ways were patient because they thought, okay, we haven't done this very often. Let's go ahead and see this all the way through. And it's not anything new to Jets fans. We're so used to this type of situation. So I'm with you. I hear you. This is an interesting take, and this is why I've always one of the reasons why I do not want to see anybody get fired. Why would anybody want to come here? And that's the reason why, unfortunately, Adam Gase was kept, I believe. I think that the ownership and, anybody that was advising the Johnsons, if you fire this guy, you're going to get even worse candidates to come to your place, because a one and done does not look good. But the Cardinals, they pulled it off. They one and done their guy, and then they got who's their coach from college?
Cliff Kingsbury.
Cliff, the former Jets quarterback. I should have remembered that. All right. Somebody asked where Mike is, and Vern's always ripping into him. Checked into the Betty Ford Clinic. Oh. All right. We'll move on. Guys, you're totally too fast. If you would like to have a guaranteed read comment, just send me $1 or something, and I can read your comment. I cannot keep up with y'all. That's all there is to it. We'll move on. We're going to go to the topics which will lead into the show. So we've talked about Robert Saleh and Joe Douglas, the concerns. I posted a little poll in the community tab, and 46% of the people that voted, and there were 74 voters, they are questioning and doubting the current regime. We've talked a lot about needing to give them time, 2 more years. Are you questioning Joe Douglas? That's the conversation. That's the topic. Do you and it's not it's both of them. So James, you're going to go first. Are you starting to have, not necessarily Saleh, because I think it's way too early, but are you having doubts about either one of these guys?
So I'm not. Joe Douglas, I think I like him more than most people. I think he's doing actually a pretty good job, considering, and to kind of bleed into the previous question of, did McCagnon really mess this team up that bad? I think the answer is so clearly yes. In that regard, like I won't talk about him too much, but Quinnen Williams, right? Mm-hmm. I mean, I can't even really think of what else came out of his entire 4 years or so through the draft.
Foley
through the drafts.
Fakasi.
Yeah, right. Foley. I mean, Nathan Shepard, he just gets a penalty every like 6 plays.
Dude, it's
And
crazy this year. It's
those
crazy.
might be right. And he drafted Marcus May and obviously Jamal Adams and stuff like that. But yeah, I'm talking about like non-obvious picks. Like when you had the third pick in that draft and Kyler Murray went and then Nick Bosa went, you had to take Quinnen Williams. He was the best player in that draft, other than Nick Bosa on at least the defensive side of the football. So you just kind of get like a home run, easy pick there. But second round, third round, fourth round, fifth round, that needed the draft. He got like zero, completely nothing at all. So I do think Joe Douglas got a plate where it was a disaster. It was a garbage plate, basically. There was just crap everywhere, and it needed to be completely stripped down and put up. And I really liked his move to trade Jamal Adams, right? Jamal Adams didn't want to be here. Fact of the matter, didn't want to be here. I didn't want him here after he's just like going crazy on social media. Just didn't want him around. But as a GM, like if you really think about it, that was his first year as the general manager, that first offseason as a general manager for Joe Douglas. And he's faced with a situation of, I have to trade an all-pro player when I'm trying to build up this roster. Like, do I try to work it out with them? Like, what's going to be the reaction to my move to trade an all-pro player when we legitimately have nearly next to nothing already on the roster? And he made the move because it was in the best interest of the Jets long-term. And he wound up, doing okay in his first draft, right? You think about Becton, you potentially have your franchise left tackle if he can stay healthy. Mims, I think, is a victim of circumstance right now. I think he can be a contributor on this team if you give him the ability to. Obviously, the James Morgan pick and things like that are kind of, the iffy factor of it. But you potentially walk away with a starting cornerback in that draft in the 5th round as well. So you think about Bryce Hall and Mekhi Becton right away, you get a franchise left tackle and a starting corner. You're off to a pretty good start considering there was, really next to no offseason, a virtual draft considering the circumstances. And then you come back and you get Zach Wilson, you get Elijah Vera-Tucker, you get Michael Carter, both Michael Carters, and who else? Brandon Eccles, he's contributing. You grab a guy like a Javelin Guidry to play in the slot, undrafted guy, undrafted free agent. And so you have a little pieces there. You're able to sign Carl Lawson. You grab John Franklin Myers. You're able to sign a Morgan Moses. And so I think there are pieces there. So I would hold off on anything Joe Douglas wise until we see what he has the potential to do in this offseason. Saleh, I think I just expected more fire. Is that like, I feel like that's pretty fair criticism wise. I'm just seeing like that all gas, no break, like that opening introduction that we got from him. Like, you're on your 2 feet, you stand up, like you feel the fire. And I feel like it's kind of like died out as the season's gone on. I don't know what the reason is. He seems like a guy who wants to treat his players like adults. Like he's not going to punish them, make them run laps and do like he understands they have a responsibility, things like that. They're adults, they can handle themselves. And I know I'm talking like for a really long time here.
No, you're good. You're good.
My biggest problem was this weekend, right? So I wrote down a quote that Saleh said after the game on Sunday. That was like my first, not oh crap moment, but first little like, hey, I don't want to hear that. And he said, sometimes you just get your effing teeth kicked in. Like, it's not sometimes though. It's been a lot. Like it's been like a 26-0 loss to Denver. Like it's been, okay, let me ask you guys a quick question.
Sure.
What game would you say, if any, that we were competitive in at the start of the game, meaning the first quarter and a half of the game to the first half of this season?
The first quarter and a half, I would say none of them. Right? Chad, what do you think?
None.
Right. The only game that comes to mind is Tennessee, where it was like 9-7 at one point towards the end of the first half or whatever. So if anything, maybe one, but it didn't start off great, at least the first quarter. So it's really not sometimes you get your teeth kicked in. Like, it's becoming too much of you guys are getting your teeth kicked in, so you need to fix it, not acknowledge that, hey, sometimes it just happens. I guess we'll do. Like, there was a very nonchalant aspect to it that I just really didn't gel with me very well. Because quite frankly, the Patriots threw the first punch by throwing a wide receiver reverse pass for a touchdown. They threw the first punch and you got knocked into the ropes and you just stood there and let it happen. That was my biggest problem. Like, Mike LaFleur, if the scheme isn't working, I get it. You have to kind of continue with it. But throw the scheme aside for a second. You're down 7-0 in Foxborough, and your response was, "Hey, let's just maybe try to get it to be third and reasonable with 2 runs." I'm sorry, but like, that's kind of unacceptable. I don't care what the situation is. You throw the kitchen sink out at that point in time. You say, okay, if we're going to play the game like that, then I'm going to start going up my sleeve with something that we thought about over the last 2 weeks that we were off. And I'm sorry, that's what I thought the response should have been. Once you punted that ball down 7-0 in Foxborough, the game was over. And I'm not saying you have to be Dan Campbell and crying up there on the podium, or you have to kick an onside kick like every time you score a touchdown or fake a punt. Just a little something to give us some hope that, hey, you're going to fight for a win. You're going to try to compete in this game, not just roll over and let it happen. So Saleh disappointed me last week, but I'm not ready to fire anybody. We'll see what happens this Sunday.
You did an awesome job there. Chad, go ahead and talk a little bit about losing faith, not losing faith. I especially liked what he said about Saleh. And by the way, before you go, I am all the way in on keeping Douglas. I like Douglas. I trust Douglas still. I know there's people out there that really are ready to bring their pitchforks and their torches, but I'm just not there yet. I'm not happy with some of the moves, but it's still, there's a lot of good things. Chad, what do you think?
Yeah, I think we've touched on Joe Douglas enough. As far as what we're seeing with Saleh so far, nobody knows what's going on inside his head. To me, it gives the impression of someone who, over the past few weeks, is starting to understand the gravity of the situation. He's starting to understand the reality of what he signed on to when he took this position. So, yes, he was all gas, no brakes. He was high energy. He was high energy in training camp. He was high energy in the preseason games, and even the first couple games, you could see it, the energy on the sidelines. He's up. He's going crazy. And now you're seeing that sort of, 100-yard stare. He's got the blank stare. I think he's going to adjust. I think he's going to come back around. It's worth noting, I mean, he still does get fired up. I mean, he dropped his first F-bomb at the presser on Sunday. We haven't seen that before. Normally, he's very respectful, and he tries to be very dignified with the press. He tries to keep it very, very professional. He didn't do that. You could see how frustrated he was. That, I think, is what's going on with Saleh. Young teams, people, fans especially, gravitate towards that high energy. We'd like to see that back, no matter what it is. When your quarterback takes a shot below the knee, you want to see him go and fight with it, even if you want to reevaluate the tape, even if you agree with it, or shouldn't say agree with it, but even if you don't think it's totally egregious, you need to send a message to the team by getting up in somebody's face, by having that energy. Same thing with the O-line. So he's got to say to himself, what can I do to contribute here? What can I do to make my presence felt and let everybody know that this is the kind of energy I need to see on the field? He has to show it himself. He has to lead by example. That's what we want to see. That's what we're not seeing. So hopefully we'll see more of that as the season goes on.
Yeah, I think it's fair to criticize Salah a little bit because um, I just feel like that is like who he is, and I feel like almost in a way when he took the job, it's almost like he's getting in his own head. He's like, I'm the head coach now. I'm running the whole team. I can't do this all the time. Almost like he's like holding back, kind of. Um, but it could just be one of those situations where he doesn't have anything to really get hyped about because that's really what he does. He reacts to the players succeeding on the field. That's what we saw in San Francisco. He'd be like going ape shit when they would stop him on fourth down, like all of those things. So we don't need him to be a cheerleader. We need him to be a guy that motivates and leads. And I think that's what we're kind of getting at. And Tommy R in the chat is bringing up all the things that he's been saying in some of these interviews, in the pressers. And he needs to gather himself a little bit. And I think that he does need to realize, like you said, Chad, the situation is pretty intense right now. And he's either going to rise to the top or he's going to crumble. And I'm leaning towards him still being able to do what we thought he was going to do, which was lead this franchise. I still envision him as a Bill Cowher type of head coach, and I hope that eventually will come. And first-year head coaches, there's absolutely a learning curve. There's no doubt about it. He's definitely got some things to learn as he goes. So far, we haven't really had too many game situations where he's totally goofed up. I know you mentioned the punting, James, but there haven't been too many situations where I've been like, man, why did we do that? Like, as a team, like what kind of decision was that? So I do think he needs to get aggressive, and I think he needs to relay that message to his assistant coaches as well.
Yeah. Yeah.
All right, cool. Good conversation. And I do think, like I said, I love just Joe Douglas. I still believe in him. There are moves that are questionable, but I think every GM has those. It's just every decision is a dice roll. You don't know how it's going to go. All right. We will go to the game plan, and then we will do our predictions, and then we will put a bow on the show. Game plan versus the Bengals. Maybe we'll just start off by talking about what's going to be difficult to stop. And I think it's kind of obvious. Chad, you can go first. How are we going? What are we up against right now?
Yeah, I think in some situations, even though it's probably not going to be the result, well, it's going to be the result that we all expect. I think it's going to be a good experience for this young secondary. I really do. And I know I've said that a couple times this year, but you only get a couple chances to go up against the best of the best in the NFL. Especially for a guy like Brandon Echols, I think it'll be a great experience for him to see that. That secondary has surprised everybody this year. They've been the absolute silver lining to the cloud that's been this season.
They're number one in the AFC right now.
It's unbelievable. And it just goes to show you, like, even guys, who spend their whole careers watching this team, they were blown away by what we've seen from this secondary so far. Absolutely blown away. I think they're going to have their hands full, to say the least, on Sunday. And that's good for them. It's good for them. Why not? It's not like we have a playoff position on the line, right? So let them see what it's like to go up against the best, and let the chips fall where they may.
All right. James, initial thoughts on this matchup. What could be some of the game plan strategies? There's some funny comments coming in. What do you think some of the game plan strategy could be going into this game? I do like the mention that you made, Chad, about we've all been talking about how we want to see Bryce Hall against some really top guys this season. We've seen it a little bit in the past. He went against Keenan Allen. What do you got for me, James?
Yeah, so at least on the defensive side of the ball, we got to start to generate some kind of pressure. We got to pressure Joe Burrow, but pressure him in a way that you can kind of keep him in the pocket, because he's got a little bit of magic to him. When he rolls out, he has the ability to kind of, you don't see him as like the gunslinger type, but he's able to kind of make throws off platform, which give him, kind of the ability to get outside and make a big play, especially their tight end, Uzoma, I think is how you say it. He's been
Yeah.
having the last at least 3 weeks or so. He's been really prevalent in the passing game because they're really opening up outside with Chase and T. Higgins and Tyler Boyd. Tyler Boyd kind of feasts that middle of the field. So I do hope our linebackers are kind of back in the terms of C.J. Mosley and Quincy Williams and Jared Davis. We may get a look at this week. But I don't think they're necessarily overrated. But it's going to be a great test for our secondary. The guy that I'm really looking forward to kind of seeing, or I hope we see him, and it's not really an invisible type of game, is Ashton Davis. I mean, he's got a really good opportunity here to really kind of make his mark. He's healthy now. He's on the field, and it just sometimes goes a little missing here and there. So I really look forward to seeing how he does. And that front four, if that's going to be the game plan, to get pressure with the front four and bend and don't break, they got to start getting a little more pressure, and especially on Joe Burrow. And because last week it was more so just it was a break from the beginning. So that's what I'm kind of looking at defensively. Get pressure on Joe Burrow and make life a little bit easier on these cornerbacks, because even if they play well, Jamar Chase has the ability to make a play, even if you're in position, and same with T. Higgins. So offensively, it's going to be tough. It's going to be a tough one. That's just going to be the fact of the matter. So again, kind of like I'm hoping that they bring some of that Elijah Moore kind of reverse sweep there. Not all the time, but
Sure.
Throw things like that in there early on in the game to maybe create a rhythm, and then God forbid, maybe the run game just kind of starts to get going. And my biggest thing is what's that stadium gonna be like, because it may not be friendly if they get off to a bad start after what's happened last week. So I'll be in attendance at the game, and so I'll kind of be looking around first to see how many people actually go, and then second, what is the reaction if these guys can't get off the ground running, really ASAP. I don't think the fans are going to have patience whether Mike White is at quarterback or not. So they're not going to understand.
They will not have any patience at all. Okay. I think seeing Bryce Hall against Jamar Chase, and he'll be lined up against a bunch of them. It's not going to be just Jamar Chase. Mm-hmm. But to say that he's having a great season is just stating the obvious, but he is having a remarkable season. Over 700, I think it was over 750 yards, numerous touchdowns. I mean, he can really do anything. I think that's the one selling point for Jamar Chase at top of the draft, going that early. He can do everything. One of the things that he's going to do to us is he's going to make catches even when he's not open. He's so good at the high pointing the ball, grabbing it out of the air, even with contact. And he is tough to tackle too. That's the other thing. He catches it and he can break tackles. So I'm worried about our secondary. Ashton Davis is a good tackler. He was popping people in that Patriots game. I mean, although we obviously got blown out, he did not look terrible in that game, I didn't think. Keys to the game. My God, it's going to be really hard to win this one, man. I mean, I think I'm stating the obvious as well. It's going to be one of those games where I think we'll be behind again. I will predict that we will score points in the first quarter, though. I am going to throw that out there. Yes, it's going to happen. This is the week. We will score points. I won't say how many, but we will get some points. And I think we're just going to fall behind. We're not going to be able to keep up. They're going to be very aggressively trying to get a lead early in the game, because I think they know if they do, they can just basically trounce us. The other thing I will say is, if we are able to stop their running game, which is important, we need to be able to limit Joe Mixon. If he's going off and the passing game's going off, good golly, we might be seeing another 50-point game. So limiting Joe Mixon and having second and long and third and long situations is what we have to have. If we don't get those, we're in deep doo-doo. That's what I'm going to stick with. if we can stop the run, give our pass rushers a chance to pin their ears back, maybe we can create some turnovers, get a fluky lead, anything to have a shot. That would be my key to the game. Stopping the run, getting third and long situations to go after Joe Burrow. Having said that, I just don't see it working out this weekend. So anyway, let's go to the comments, and then we will make some predictions, and then we will put the bow on the show. Let's see. Yeah, we got some predictions already in here. Bengals 28, Jets 10. Tommy R., are they holding anyone accountable other than Mims for the bad play or the penalties? Because it doesn't seem so. Bench rotten, play Murray, Feeney, or Williams. I think that's a fair question. We've heard about how he doesn't know the offense and that he shouldn't play until he knows it. But then why aren't we seeing any other lineup changes then? Why is that not happening? With poor play, you should see changes. That's one of the things that I was hoping to see coming out of the bye week was some adjustments to the lineup. What are your thoughts on that? Not necessarily Mims not playing, but just the idea that he seems to be the only one getting like the tough love from the coach. James, you can go first.
Yeah, no, I think it's a completely fair question. I mean, we still see Van Rotten in there and kind of someone we just talked about in Nathan Shepard. If he gets one more penalty, I don't know how you continue to put the guy out there.
Right.
And so it's a completely fair question in terms of, hey, if guys aren't playing well, you gotta take him out. I mean, I think the Mims thing is really ridiculous. But yeah, I think it's absolutely a fair question, and we should see some changes here and there if certain guys continue to play like they have been.
Cool. Chad, you got any take on that?
Well, I mean, your point lends itself to the conspiracy theory that there is something else going on behind the scenes with Denzel Mims, because, I mean, the story has kind of died down since. But was anybody buying the whole? You got to learn the three or four positions. What's next? You have to learn front office accounting. you got to learn how to mow,
how to cut the grass.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's weird, man. It's super weird, and I think you're right. I think something happened behind the scenes. So, NY Jets Florida, he says the defense is going to have a 3 to 4 turnover game to win this game. We are still searching for our first interception. We do have a Bengals fan in the chat, and he's not being a douchebag, which is always cool. I'm happy to interact with other fans of different teams. He says, sorry, y'all. I'm a Bengals fan since I was 3. I just came to see what y'all are going to say about the upcoming game. No disrespect to y'all. I genuinely feel bad about last week.
Thank you.
Yeah, you and me both, man.
Yeah.
It's tough. And a Bengals fan knows that there are, about hard times. If you've been rooting for them for a long time, you know that there's been some tough roads there. All right, Vern, man, he is bringing the sauce tonight. He said they're overrated, and he is predicting an upset special. Crazier things have happened, I guess. The only problem I have though with predicting a win is the backup. The backup quarterback's in right now. Upset special 21-20 Jets. Coaching staff questions are answered. Tommy R is going to be in attendance, and he says he'll be wearing a clown mask. So keep your eyes peeled for that one.
Yeah, I gotta take a look.
Yeah, send me a picture of that, Tommy. Send it to my email, nyjtoday@gmail.com. I would love to see that. And anybody who wants to send pictures, that would be awesome. I could even do that. I should have thought of that. Send pictures if you're going to the game. Send me pictures. I would love to put those up on the streams, assuming you're comfortable with that, of course. Let's see. Jets just need that pressure. All attending Jets fans wear black. They either came ready for Halloween or for the funeral. This is the third or fourth funeral that we've had this season. That's the only problem. We've had a couple already. We got Jeremy Cravat coming in here. It's cool of you to come in. I think I'm going to actually be joining Jeremy and Frankie on their show on Friday. So that'll be pretty cool. Our secondary is overrated because it's so easy to run on us. We'll see, man. If you're predicting the win, I can't believe you're thinking that they're overrated. That's the only thing I don't understand. If our secondary is overrated and we're gonna win this game, I don't know how that is. Let's see. First game without Zach Wilson. James, you got a question here? James, did Ashton Davis use his arms in any tackles last week? I feel like every tackle he launches his face into the player's hip. He'll be in the concussion protocol soon.
Yeah, he does do that. He has the tendency to kind of lunge like that, which other than the concussion protocol, if you hit a knee or anything, it gives it kind of a little bit more of a ability to break the tackle. Got to wrap up most of these guys anyway, especially at his size. I don't think he's a very big guy. So, he's fast as all heck. So that gives him kind of the ability to, to kind of run down like a missile here and there. But yeah, I can't say if he never uses his arms, but yeah, you see him kind of fly around a little bit and throw his body around. So, we'll see. I'm waiting for him to get his hands on a football. I feel like with his speed, he's got to have some serious range back there. So that's what I'm kind of waiting on.
Yeah, I've enjoyed watching him fly around. I know his tackling form is not textbook necessarily, but it's nice to see him running around. He's clearly got the speed that we're all wanting. Vern posted this a couple of times. I appreciate you sending it in more than once. He says, does an upset validate the coaching staff? Chad, what do you think?
Well, I think any win this season, especially right now, would alleviate some pressure, especially from the fans' perspective. I wouldn't say it would be total validation in the same way that the Titans game wasn't either, but it would definitely go a long way, especially against this Bengals team.
Mm-hmm. James, what are your thoughts on would it validate?
Yeah, no, I don't know if it would validate, but maybe it would just give us a feel of, hey, maybe they legitimately just had the worst day of their lives last week. Like, you know what I'm saying? Like, more so, okay, maybe we don't ever have to see what happened against the Patriots again, and it was just a bunch of circumstances collided and led to the win. So wouldn't necessarily, validate the coaching staff, but it would make us feel a little bit better going forward that we got something going at least.
And that's kind of what I felt like with the Titans game. Like, I didn't expect us to go on some massive run, but I was like, okay, like, this is good. We are competing, and I was like, okay, we can expect to see this more in the future. I think if we were just competitive in this football game, I think that might even be a good, not to validate them exclusively. I don't know if that's what he's saying necessarily, but like, it would show some form of competency, and I think that's kind of what he's getting at. So I think, yes, I think it would be a big plus if we were even just competitive in this football game. I hate to be so, not negative, but just like low expectations. I do think that would be impressive. All right. We will go to our predictions segment. Does anybody want to predict first what they think the score will be and who will perform and who will not perform? You want it, Chad? You're nodding your head. Go for it.
So the only reason I would have this game a little bit closer than I otherwise would have is because this is a classic trap game for the Bengals. So they just had a huge win where they've been hearing about Lamar being the best in the league, and I agree that he is. So I think that they went to Baltimore. They had a huge win there. High energy game whole time. Then they're looking ahead to a divisional matchup right after they play us. Everybody knows how terrible we are. We just got blown out. Makes for a classic trap. The only thing that could make it more of a trap game is probably if the Bengals were at home. Nonetheless, it won't be enough for us to overcome anything. I'm calling it 27-17 Bengals.
27-17. Okay. Oh God. Grant Rude, set the bar low. Bengals win 49-9. You won't be disappointed, that's for sure.
Yeah.
James, you're up. What do you got?
So I got 31-14 Bengals. I think it's just kind of one of those where with Mike White at quarterback, it could look very similar. Yeah, it could look very similar to a lot of the other games where I think the defense comes out and plays better. I do and not that I mean better. They could do anything and it would be better than last week,
Yep.
but I think they play better, more so one of those games where they really play well early on, and the offense is just not going to the point where they can't hold on any longer in stopping some of these guys on the Bengals offense, these wide receivers and Joe Mixon. I think it just becomes a point where they bench for so long, and maybe they make a big play here and there, but ultimately the offense kind of forces them to break towards third quarter or so, and so I feel like that's how it's likely going to play out, and maybe we get a couple touchdowns here and there, maybe one in garbage time, but yeah, so I think it's mostly Bengals pretty handily in this game.
There you go. Life is better in green. Thank you so much for that super chat. Really appreciate that. He says, love the show. Thanks for the great chat. You're super cool to say that. Thanks for the compliment. Really means a lot. Yeah, I mean, I do not expect a lot from this game. I have us losing 31-10. I don't want to make it sound like if Zach Wilson were in this game that we would somehow be competitive, but I think that it would be more competitive. It's going to be hard, man. The defense will play better. I think that's definitely something I'm comfortable predicting as well. Mosley back. Assuming Davis is good to go, I have to imagine him running around the field like a maniac, which he is. I think he's good for that. I think he's going to bring a lot of energy to this defense. So the defense will play better, but it's going to be one of those situations where our offense does no favors at all to our defense. Time of possession is going to be a factor. Sacks, turnovers, hits on the quarterback. Those could be all things that we see. Trey Hendrickson, somebody that was really high on in the offseason, who I actually was talking about him more than I was Carl Lawson, having a pretty good season this year for the Bengals. So he looks good. They have a young kid out of, is it Wyoming? Logan Wilson?
Yeah, linebacker.
Dude has been making plays like a maniac. Their defense, I don't know if their defense is like one of the better in the league or anything like that. And I think as the season goes along, I think their defense may even have some weaknesses that offensive coordinators, really good ones, will find. But I think that it's just going to be really hard, man. They've got a really good football team. They're one of the best teams. I don't know if they'll be number one in the AFC the entire season. I think they will maybe slip up a little bit, but they are definitely a playoff team this year. It looks like it. They have beaten good teams. It's not like the Broncos when they started 3-0, kind of like a mirage, kind of like the Panthers, a mirage. We could all kind of see that wasn't going to necessarily continue on. But yeah, I don't give us a great shot. So 31-10 is my score. James 34-10, 34-13.
31-14. Yep.
31-14, and Chad 27-17. Give a couple more comments and then we are out of here. Grant Rude says, I don't watch. Whoops, sorry, that was the super chat. Grant Rude says, I don't watch the Giants. Evan Ingram is just a name to me. What do you think of going after him before the deadline? We can hit that. I'll just say this: he's essentially a first round bust, but there's talent there. James, why don't you talk a little bit about it? Would you make a move? It probably wouldn't cost a whole lot.
Yeah, it may not cost a whole lot. I have worries about the fit because based on how we kind of run our offense with the tight ends kind of inline blocking. Not really very much spread out. I mean, to me, Evan Ingram is basically just a really big wide receiver. That's just my opinion of him. So, he kind of definitely fell out with the Giants fans. Like you look online and they're just kind of all over him. I follow the Giants because a lot of my friends are Giants fans. And a lot of drops fumbles here and there, the injuries. Is it low risk? Yeah. I just don't know if he's, a potential problem solver for the tight end room. Yeah, I think he's a little bit more flashy than, what we need more so consistent contributor, blocking and receiving.
Chad, you got any takes different than that?
I would take a flyer on anybody at tight end. It really just depends on that.
The cost.
What we give up. Right. And now that we made this unnecessary, in my opinion, Flacco move, I'm not really interested in giving up anything more. I want to stockpile my picks for a better future.
It's fair enough. All right. Free Kenny Yeboah.
Just a quick comment,
sure.
And I'll maybe next week we'll kind of do a tight end segment, maybe just a quick tight end segment, and I'll put together some names because I think there's some pretty serious talent in the tight end class in the draft that we'll be able to have our shot at. So that's where my fixed tight end wise is going to come from, because I do think there'll be some guys that we will be able to target in the draft.
Sorry, I'm not trying to ignore what you just said. I like the idea a lot. I think that in the next 3 weeks, the season will be officially a wrap.
Right.
We have the Bengals, the Colts, who I think are as underrated as the 3 and 4 team as they could possibly be. I think they're a really solid team, and then we have the Bills. So I think we can definitely do that next week. And I think as the weeks go on, a couple more weeks now, I think we can start to realistically have profiles every single Wednesday night. We can profile 1 to 2 players, talk about them in the draft, why they're a good fit. I think that's a great idea for the show. Because listen, man, as the weeks go on, we might not have a whole lot to talk about with regards to our team. So,
I'll see if I can pull any film on a couple guys, but I may just be kind of scouting report type of things. I'm kind of scouring the internet for some college films. So
I think people will even like that, to be perfectly honest with you. And some of the most popular streams that we've ever done were discussing the draft. So we talked about that, man. We hit the scores. You can just rewind it. We hit it. We predict a Bengals win. Don't you worry, buddy.
A lot to a little.
Yes. All right. So that'll be it for this episode. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, for all of the comments, for our super chat. Really appreciate that. Grant Rude. Season not even half over yet. Draft analysis coming out. I agree, though. It's the next step. It indeed is. It is painfully the truth and the fact that we have to face. Thank you guys so much for watching. Sunday night, Chad will not be on. It will be me and Jetboy Green, Paul Esdrin from he's on YouTube. He has his own YouTube channel. He's on Twitter, so he'll be on the show instead of Chad, and that'll be it. So we'll see you guys on Sunday night. The link for that is in the description of this stream. So thank you guys so much for watching. Go Jets, and a word from my daughter. See you guys next time.
Have a good night, guys.
Later, peeps.